You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hello, this is Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. There are latest things that makes official. Welcome to the big show. As always, the Chris Voss Show is the man that loves you. And we just appreciate you guys spending your time with us over 16 years and 2,400 episodes. And so we'll just keep making more. If you don't mind, we'll just double that or triple that in the next year or something, and I'll lose my mind. Anyway, go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss1 on the TikTok and Facebook.com/Chris Voss. Today we have an amazing young lady on the show. We're talking about her book that came out September 4th, 2024, of her story, Shattered to Mosaic, all the while trusting God and walking with Jesus. We have Cynthia Kaitfors-Smith on the show with us today. We're going to be talking about her insights, some of the stories of her lifetime and what she's gone through and done. She's a Christian gal with a gift of gab, a great imagination, and creative spirit. She spent her young life in the beautiful Black Hills of South Dakota. She earned her BA in psychology, her master's in marriage family therapy, and a school counselor credential. She's now an adjunct faculty member with the Fresno Pacific University and Christian University. She instructs students in early child development who want to teach with kindness, empathy, and understanding, as well as all ages and stages of developmental milestones. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you very much for asking.
Thank you, Cynthia. And give us any .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs?
They can find me on newlifeenjoy.com. That's my book page for New Life. I'm also on Facebook with the same, so they can find me there for sure.
There you go. So give us a 30,000 overview of what's inside your new book.
Wow. It is all about walking through the trials and tribulations of being blindsided by a divorce through infidelity.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. That's not fun.
No,
Not fun at all.
it was
Yeah. Well, these are the
not a fun time.
stories we collect on the Chris Voss Show, stories of trials, tribulations, cathartic moments, and the journey that people went through and how they overcame and persevered through these dark moments of people's lives, and they help other people share with their, the resources they use to the journey to make it better. So give us a little bit more drill down, if you would, on that. Tell us about your life. Is it a bit of a memoir, this book?
It is actually a journal. Because I earned my degree in counseling, when I realized I was about to be divorced after decades of marriage, I thought, what would I tell myself if I was my client? And the first thing I would say is journal. And so that's what I began the first week after finding myself in this predicament. And I just started journaling, and I journaled. And then one night, I just could hear the Lord tell me that, are you thankful for nothing? He called me by name, Cynthia, are you thankful for nothing? And it was like,
Wow.
whoa. It was like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. It was all about me, right? And so I turned the page and I started journaling to God and how I was going to get through this. And then He walked through it with me every step of the way, between just trusting in Him and hanging on to Jesus through many miracles were just amazing. And then as I continued to journal, I could just hear that you need to write this for other people. You need to help other people who are so shattered that you need to help them get put back together. And so that's what I was doing.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Now, how many years were you married?
I was married 30.
30 years. And tell us about how you found out about the infidelity. Take us through the story a little bit more in depth. I know we want people to read the book, so there's that. But, give us a foundation, if you will.
Well, I think probably I knew before I knew, But, we live with that don't upset the apple cart attitude. And things were not the best, but my ex-husband was going through some career problems. And so I had attributed that to that and just kind of left at it. But I knew there were problems. And it just became worse and worse. And then what happened was one day I found a cell phone bill. And this was before you had all the freebies on your cell phone. You had to pay for long distance. You had to pay for all that time you used. And our phone bill was over $800 for 1 month.
What?
Yeah. And it wasn't business related. I can tell you that. And so that brought it to a head. Yes.
Now, was this 1-900 numbers or calling an individual?
Personal number to his girlfriend.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I've had a few people, they use the Apple phone, and the Apple phone will upload all the text messages to a main Apple computer. And so even though the spouses may have their own separate phones, they can get busted. I guess I don't know the right word. But because it uploads that central thing. Yeah. Now, I've known a whole bunch of people that have got busted because they're talking to their girlfriends and it got uploaded to the Apple, the main computer. Exactly. And their wife was sitting there reading it in real time, which is never good.
And when you get the bill, it's a little bit of a shocker. It's like over $800. Just like, whoa, what happened here?
Chatting. That's a lot of talking. It's a lot of talking.
Yes.
So at that point, give us, I'm sure the details are in the book, but give us a little bit of tease out. I mean, do you confront him? How does this go down?
Eventually I did, because I had to know, what was going on. And he truly missed his calling. He should have been an actor because he had a double life and he did it well. Wow. And so he was trying to talk his way out of it. But that's when even if you don't want to know.
And so I just too much.
Yeah. And I just went.
Protest too much, as Shakespeare used to say. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Yes. No, it's true. And so it was a point of, do you believe the lie or do you still confront it? And that's when I said, no, we can't go further than this because there's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And the loss of trust is hard to rebuild.
Oh, for sure. But you know what? I have such a strong faith in God. I always have, that I figured we could fix anything. Forgetting that there's free will in the world. And if there's only one part of the family, one part of the couple that wants to fix it, it's not going to work. And, but truthfully, as time went on, there was no way I would have ever trusted him again. So it was the right thing, even though divorce.
Once that trust is lost, it's nearly impossible to gain, because it's always going to be in the back of your head, right?
Exactly.
You're always going to be like, what are they up to and what are they doing?
Yeah.
And all that good stuff. So now tell us about your foundation in growing up. Where did you get involved with, your faith? Did you always have your faith? Did you find it? Give us an idea of how that works.
That's a really good question. And it's always been there forever. Mm-hmm. It's always been there. My mom was incredible. She was Japanese. After World War II, she, faced a lot of stuff that I didn't quite understand, but she made sure we always got to church. And so I have 3 brothers and, we went to church and did our thing. But I believe maybe one of my other brothers, my younger brother, my youngest, has a faith as deep as mine. But I'm the Gabby one. I'm the one that'll talk your ear off. I don't know a short story. My kids can attest to that, or my students can attest to that. I'm sure.
I don't know a short story. I love that.
Yeah, I don't. And anyway, it's always been there. So I was the gal that would go to church during Lent by myself on a Wednesday or a Friday. And I just had a deeper calling. And being the only daughter, I had told my mom when I was about 17, I think I want to be a nun. And she about had a heart attack and said, well, first of all, Cynthia, you are not Catholic. And I went, oh, yeah, that's true. And then she said, but if you want to serve the Lord, there's many ways you can do it without hiding yourself away in a monastery. Those were her words, not mine. And so I thought, oh, that's true. That is very true. So it was always there. And actually with my ex-husband, the first date we had was to church, because it was always really, really important to me to have a strong faith. And I thought he did, but like I said, he should have been an actor.
Well, you did. I mean, was things good? You said you were married, I think, for 30 years.
Yes.
Was it good for a while, or were you dealing with an actor the whole time, or?
I think I was dealing with an actor for a whole time. However, I think the beginning of our marriage was pretty nice, but there were problems all along. There were, I, in hindsight, is 2020, and you can certainly see it. And his family did not appreciate him marrying a gal of Japanese ethnicity.
Really?
And so, it started off rocky, and I don't think he had the courage to back out of it. And I was just oblivious.
Wow.
I was a college girl in love. What did I know?
It's unfortunate. Now, there was that time where I think you mentioned World War II, and there was the Japanese internment camps and different things. Did you see your mother get pulled into any of that? I mean, there's a lot of racist stuff that was going on back then.
My mom and my mom's sister, my Aunt Mary, they were young girls at the time. And so they were put in a foster home, and it was a really abusive foster home, but that's where they were put. And then I probably, we always laugh about it, but I think my grandfather, my mother's father, did not go in an internment camp, but he worked for the government somehow. He did something, because he was probably the only Japanese man walking around the United States. I don't know.
Wow.
But bless his heart, he was an amazing guy, and left the girls there. And the mom didn't have much time for them until much later. So they had a really, really rough time. But between the two sisters, the little girls, their life was incredible. Absolutely. My cousin and I think about them all the time, because they were fabulous women. Just didn't have a lot of the opportunities that they made sure their daughters had.
Wow. There you go. Yeah. I mean, it was an interesting journey back then, and you kind of have to think about, what that, maybe the impact that had on you and everything, and finding faith, et cetera, et cetera. So, when you go through this cathartic moment, you're getting divorced. That's a lot of craziness. I don't know if craziness is the right word, but that's a lot of to unpack after 30 years of security, and and I don't know if you went into the dating world after that. That's always a crazy place to be, especially these days. So,
well, unfortunately, I did. My younger son, I have two sons, and my younger son saw how devastated I was. My older son and his family lived in Arizona. So my younger son, after graduation, came back into the Fresno area, and we didn't live together, but he had his own place. But he felt so bad that I was so shattered, that he just said, why don't you get online? I said, the last thing I want to do is meet another guy, that kind of attitude. It was like, give me a break. But at some point, I had a lot of coffee dates, a lot of coffee dates. Yeah. And that, but I was, at that point, I had really immersed myself in the Lord, because I knew the only way I was going to get through this was be resilient with the power of God walking with me. And that's what I did. And so even on my coffee dates, I rambled on about the good Lord. And I can remember one guy said, "You are the most enthusiastic person for God I've ever met." And I thought, well, yeah, we're not ever going to see each other again.
It was like, give me a dismissive sort of compliment. That dismissive compliment, as it were.
Yes, for sure. But it was okay with me, because I wasn't invested in it anyway. So
yeah, coffee dates, you checking
but
each other out.
There was a lot. And truthfully, as I started this journey, I realized I need to get into a Bible study for other women. I needed to get involved. I could just hear the Lord pushing me. And so I joined a women's Bible study at our church. And it was a Beth Moore study. I'll never forget it. I don't know the name of the study, but out of the first beginnings, the first question was, do you believe in God? And I thought, well, what a silly place to start. Of course we believe in God. We're in church, right? And then the second question was, do you trust him? And that was when I made the decision that because I'm listening to the other women speak, and I'm thinking, how can you not trust him? And then it was like, do you trust him, Cynthia? Or do you maybe kind of trust him? And so I turned my life over to him completely. And I trusted him, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent, crying all day and maybe having joy the next. It didn't matter. I trusted him. And so through all my journals, even as sad as I was, there was always hope and there was always resilience.
There you go. And, you know, I think we all seek a paternal figure. We hope someone's watching over us and looking after us. And certainly people find that in marriage. People find that in relationships. People find that in religion.
Yeah.
You know, it gives people a safety net where, you know, they believe in something bigger than themselves. And for some people, we talk about addiction. I think we had some people on addiction this week. You know, it helps them find something bigger than themselves that they can latch onto and hold on to. So in the story, I don't know if you want to tell us the ending. Does you end up getting remarried or any luck there?
Yeah, you know, it was a God thing for sure.
Okay.
But after quite a while, I was single for 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally told my best friend, Nancy, that I really want to meet a guy. I'm ready. And she goes, are you sure? You've said that before. And I go, no, I'm ready. I think I'm ready.
Ready now.
Yeah. And so she says, I don't know anybody now, but if I think of someone, I will. And so one day, the Super Bowl was on, and she called me and she goes, we're having a party. I want you to meet this guy. Come over. And I said, I do not want to come over to a Super Bowl party. I got my jammies on. I got the beginning of a cold. She goes, no, you have to meet him. She said, he's a widower and he's not ready to date, but I want him to meet you. So, all right, Nancy, I'm coming. So I go over there, and he really never says a word to me because the guys are watching football, right?
Yeah,
but I guess he noticed me. And as everybody was leaving, he walks over to me and he takes my hand and he takes it in both hands. And he said, Cynthia, it was really nice to meet you. And when he touched me, an electrical shock went through me. And prior to that, many years before that, I had a dream that's in the book. I had a dream that I was just lost, but Jesus asked me to hold his hand. And the minute I reached out to hold his hand, the electrical love that flows from Jesus went through me. This was the same electrical flash that I'd felt before. And so it was like, oh my gosh, what had just happened? And I was just perplexed by it. But anyway, so then 2 years later, we joined a singing and dancing group for people 55 and older. And my husband has an extraordinary voice. He has a beautiful voice. I'm okay. I'm good in a group, but I'm a dancer and I've always danced. And that's how we then finally got together. But
now,
I didn't trust him.
Was this the same gentleman who had held your hand 2 years before?
Yes, it's the same gentleman that held my hand.
There you go.
And of course, you know, it has to go, you have to live life with a sense of humor. And finally, after many weeks, because you have like 3 or 4 months of rehearsals because you have 18 shows. It's really a big production. However, he finally comes over during a break and he sits down with some friends of mine. And the first thing he says to me is, so Cynthia, how old are you? And in my head, I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? That's the first thing you're going to say to me? And of course, I'm going to say 55, right? I'm not going to tell him my age. But one of my friends had said, well, you graduated in 65, right? Well, now I have to tell my age.
Now
well, he also graduated in 65. And he later told me, because we laughed and laughed about it, that the reason he asked was I look younger. And his dad had married a girl 20 years his junior, and it didn't end well. And he didn't want the same situation. So anyway, long say I don't know short stories. And then we dated quite a while. And then I just didn't trust him. So one day he took me to the Memorial Museum over in our area in Fresno, California. And we're walking around. And he guides me over to a wall that has the Distinguished Flying Cross. And there's his name. And he was in Vietnam. And he's highly decorated. And he said, I don't show that to you to brag. He said, I show that to you that says, if I tell you I love you, I mean I love you, and I won't do anything that's happened to you before. That did it. Yeah.
I love this story. There you go.
Yep.
What a nice gentleman. Very thoughtful.
Oh, he's amazing. You know, we had ups and downs. He's a CPA and I'm a therapist. So, you know, I'm warm and fuzzy and he's black and white.
Well, you know, I mean, that's kind of men and women's nature. I mean,
yes.
Women are more etherical, I think, maybe might be the right word. They believe in, you know, love and passion and peace and you know, men were really hard on the numbers and analytical and logical, but that's what, you know, that's what makes us both, or it's supposed to make us a good fit together.
Oh,
where
absolutely.
we complement each other and stuff. But yeah, there's probably still a couple arguments of who's right and who's wrong there, especially when it comes to balancing the checkbook. Maybe I hear that's always an issue in marriages. So there you go. But what a great story. What a great story. That is awesome. Because
I did end up getting married. We've been married just about 10 years. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. It is so hard. I have big dating groups and I deal with a lot of people that are 50 plus and it is so hard. And when you understand the math of how many people are still alive and how many people aren't married and how it's a very small pool to choose from because men start dying off at double the speed of women. And we're actually dying off almost double throughout most of our lives. So the challenge is that there's not much to choose from. And a lot of men, you know, a lot of men and women have both been through divorces and, you know, sometimes cleaned out alimony, child support and, you know, damage from the fallout of the divorce. And so, you know, people aren't like, I don't want to really do that again. I've done it a couple times and have my fill of it, and I'm out of money. So
and you're wearing the t-shirt. So you don't need
wearing the t-shirt. That's a good point. I still haven't gotten the t-shirt. I've been saving up for my divorce so I can get married soon. I'm up to about 2 or 3 million, and I think I need 5 million to get divorced. So I'm just planning my divorce. And then what I'm going to do is I've never been married, so I've got to catch up to everybody really quickly.
Oh, there you go.
So I'm just going to go through a bunch of really bad, like 1 to 2 year marriages really quickly. Maybe I'll do one in Vegas and just have it annulled the next week. Star. And that way I can, because everyone right now is like 3 or 4 marriages in at my age.
Oh, that's scary. That's a scary thought.
Yeah. I remember I had a young lady in one of my dating groups. She said to me, she says, she was in her 50s. She goes, Chris, I need some help with men and dating. And I go, okay, well, I'll give you some advice. And she goes, every time I go out with a guy on a coffee date, they run off screaming and never come back. And I never hear from them again. And it's pretty consistent. I'm like, they don't run off screaming, but you know, joking. Yeah. And I said, well, tell me about yourself. Well, I've been married and divorced 4 times and I want to get married again. And I was like, whoa, what? She goes, yeah, I've been divorced 4 times. And I'm like, yeah, I can tell you why guys are running away. So,
exactly.
The odds on that 5th divorce are like, I don't know, 90%.
They're pretty high.
They're pretty high. It goes badly. It's like 50-60% for the first. Then it's like, I think 73 for the second or the third. And then it goes like 84 for the, it's really bad odds. I mean, I kind of have the opinion that you get 2 shots at it, third time you're out. You know, it's like baseball, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. But there's, you know, I've heard that there are people that when it does work, it's freaking solid. So what do I know? But I certainly would rather burn money on a roulette wheel with better odds in Vegas than some of it. But those are the jokes.
There you go. Yeah.
There you go. But I'm glad you found it because I was rooting for you through the whole front of your story. I'm like, I hope this ends well.
It does.
Got a good
you know,
ending.
and that's one of the things I tell in the book is it's like being out in the wilderness. You know, it's like the Israelis out wandering for 40 years. And I said, would I have found where I needed to be if I hadn't been married? Yes, I still would have ended up happy because I was pretty satisfied being single. It's just when you have a partner, it's just so sweet. And it just adds so much to your life. And he's a strong Christian guy. So, you know, but I would have found the promised land. Mm-hmm.
That's a good question too. So when you guys met up and started getting together, you found he was maybe more religious than your prior husband?
He was more honest about it. I think I was the faithful one in our marriage. I always figured him with my ex-husband. I figured he had a strong faith because his family were strong churchgoers. But just because you go to church doesn't mean you're faithful.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
so, whereas with my husband now, Michael is a strong Christian man. He's wonderful.
There you
And
go.
so, yeah, it makes it nice. Makes it really nice.
Well, you need a masculine man to lead. You need a understanding woman's, her nature, her insecurities, and you've got to show up strong there. And it sounds like he's really good at that. He's really good
Yes.
at recognizing, things where he needs to provide security and reassurance and stuff like that. And sometimes that's guys don't really get that. So it sounds like he's quite mature, and congratulations. What do you hope people come away with when they read your book? What do you hope they maybe get?
Well, I hope that they realize that the true walk, no matter what it is, whether it's a divorce, it's health issues, finances, that if you're leaning on God, if you're trusting that everything's going to be all right, you'll be all right. And I've had many really fond, wonderful feedback from people who've read the book, even those that I didn't know. I've had a couple write me letters and say, oh my gosh, this is the best book. I had one friend tell me that she laughed, she cried, she laughed, she cried. She goes, I had no idea you went all through that. And that, and that's a testament of you role model your life. And that's what my sons found, is that I role modeled my life of what I want them to do. Now, do they do everything they're supposed to? No, but I didn't either. So that's just being human, right?
True.
It's just like my younger son played baseball for Fresno State. And, a lot of the young kids were getting the tattoos back then in the 90s. And I said, I will skin you alive if you get a tattoo. Right. Well, then we go through the divorce and I go to Phoenix to see my other son. And they're on the phone talking and all. And when I come home, my younger son goes, his name is Josh. And when Josh came to pick me up, he had the just cheesy grin on his face. And I'm going, oh, Lord, I don't know if I can take any more bad news. And I said, okay, just tell it to me. Let me know what you're thinking. And he kind of turns to the side so I can see his arm. And I like, do that again? And he has a tattoo on his arm. And I went, aren't you glad your mom's going through a divorce? Because I'd be a raving lunatic right now. And he kind of laughed. And I go, okay, turn to the side again. Let me see what it is. And what he had done, and he told me my other son, Jeremy, was doing the same thing as I left Phoenix. But they put the Japanese symbol of honor on their arms so that they would never be a man without honor like their dad. That's a quote.
Wow. That's powerful. You got a good set of sons there.
I
good
do.
Set of sons there.
I have remarkable boys. Yeah.
My moms are great. If without a mom, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, none of us would be. Yes. Yeah. But that just shows the power of divorce, because they were young people. They were young men at that time. And they were devastated by this. They had no idea. So divorce, whether you're little kids or big ones, it still is devastating to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it causes generational trauma, especially when they're young. I was lucky my parents stayed together, and they were two people that shouldn't have ever been married. But it was the 60s, and I don't know. They didn't have dating apps or something. I don't know what their excuse was, but they just weren't a fit. But they stuck it out with us, and I remember when my mom called us after we'd all left the home by then, and she goes, "Yeah, me and your dad, we finally decided to get that divorce." And we were like, "Cool, glad you guys finally could get on board with what we've known for 30 years."
Exactly. Yeah.
But they did it for us, and God bless them. I know it was tough on them. I know it was rough, but I didn't have to grow up being that divorce kid at school. It really changed in the world. I remember when I was young, the divorce lady on the block was the oddball, weird one. Everyone would be like, the lady in house 5, that sort of shit going on. And nowadays it's kind of the opposite. It's like,
Yeah.
who are those weirdos who are still married on block 5? Everybody here is
Exactly.
divorced. What's going on over there? Is there some cult or something? We don't know.
Exactly.
We do the show.
That's the truth. And that was probably one of the most difficult, the humiliation of being left for another woman.
Oh, yeah.
But also being divorced, being that 50%, the
Mm.
side that I never thought I'd find myself on. And I thought, well, if you have to be a sister in Christ with a group, I guess being a divorced group is a good one to be in. It's okay.
Well, you still
You're
got
gonna go.
Jesus and God standing by your side, so you got that going for you. Probably
Oh,
better than a piece of
absolutely.
paper from the city hall. But you did get 30 good years out of it, or 30 years out of it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of funny how people look at that and be like, "Well, that was a complete failure." But you got some beautiful sons, it sounds like, and maybe some good experiences. I don't know. So it's kind of interesting. I give counsel to a lot of women who get divorced after 20, 25 years, 27 years. But I think it is hard because marriage is kind of an identity and it's
Yes.
kind of a vehicle. And so when people get divorced, they have all these dreams of, dying with this person, retiring with this person, spending their later years with this person. You kind of have that whole, I got my person packed away sort of thing. It sounded like Ed Norton in Fight Club. I had that whole, home life down. I had that section of my life taken care of, and then all of a sudden it was gone, and you're like, well, there goes that. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. Now, one thing you talk about, I think in your book, in my notes here that I have, is you talk about how being grateful and having an attitude of gratitude. Tell us why that's important.
It is important because otherwise you wallow in self-pity. And yet
Mm,
we are given an opportunity every day. We have two choices. We can make it a good day or we can make it a bad day. And why would we choose to make it a bad day? We need to be grateful for what we have. We need to be kind and understanding. And even though I'm walking through these stages of grief, I always knew I needed to be kind. I needed to be understanding and to be grateful for what's around me or who's around me. I mean, I had a job. I had a great job. I had a nice townhouse to live in. I have a good car. I have two amazing sons. None of us are dying of cancer. There were
yeah.
so many things to be grateful for. My brother, Tom, and his wife, Bev, lived in Texas. They called me every night for I don't know how many months. Bless their hearts. Every night they listened to me wallow in pain, but they never gave up on me. And those are the things that you
Yeah.
can't get back and you can't put a price on. They're amazing. And so grateful, yes. God just did a thing for me that I did not know I had it in me to be so strong. Matter of fact, at one point after it was all said and done, I thanked my ex-husband. I said, I thank
Really?
you for what you did. I said, I don't thank you for how you did it, but I thank you for who I am now.
Yeah.
Because I am a strong woman. I was strong
Mhm.
before, but I leaned on him. And I'm a strong woman, and God has a plan. He has a plan for each one of us. And
Mhm.
you can't do it if you're wallowing in self-pity.
Yeah. And gratitude is so important. I have a thing on my calendar. I think I started this during COVID, if I recall rightly, and I started a gratitude Sunday. I think one of my gal pal friends, uh, we talked about it. I think she was in my writing group for the book. But somebody had fed me the idea of having a day where you celebrate and you just kind of have a peaceful meditative day and you be grateful for what you have. And so I have this thing called every Sunday, I'm looking at my calendar here, gratitude for gratefulness and archives every Sunday. And it's a day where I just kind of ponder throughout the day things that I should be grateful. I try and spend time with my little dog family and my mom, and I try and just focus on maybe the relationships in my life and give some thought to just hey, you got some what do you have? And I did think it came out of COVID because COVID we had all these events that we would do during at the Consumer Electronics shows and all these different events that we do all year long, that we'd appear and interview CEOs of the podcast. And we made a lot of money doing it. Let's put it that way. And during COVID, we watched that money just evaporate. 5 years of building the clientele and the reputation. I mean, we had that down to a well-oiled machine after 5 years. And then to watch it all just evaporate as events got shut down over COVID, we were lost. And I remember one of my friends, I was getting pretty lost too. And one of my friends, because for me, it was like 2008 all over again. I lost a lot of companies over at 2008. And then I had to restart. And I'm like, Jesus, I got to do this again. This is getting old. And I'm getting too old for this to restart every time. And so I remember a friend of mine, he wrote on Facebook, he said, there's two things you do right now. You either be a lifter or you find a lifter. And that's what you do. And I remember looking at that going, well, I'm not a good follower of other people. I'm more of a lifter type leader person. But I really don't feel like leading right now. And so I sat down, I said, what do I have? What do I have that I should be grateful for right now? And that really changes your perspective. And it changed my perspective. And I thought, okay, I can be a lifter. I can be a leader. I have a podcast. It's like 10 years old. But it just talks about Silicon Valley crap and technology. And like right now in the world where any of your friends or loved ones can die and you don't get to attend their funeral, or you don't get to attend their, hold their hand in a hospital, is pretty messed up. And so I'm going to try and lead, and I'm going to try and be a lifter. And then we changed the format of the show to where it wasn't just Silicon Valley crap and talking about iPhones. Like, who cares in the world we're living in that moment? And so we opened up the show's aperture to take on authors like yourself and talk about everything that was important in life, to collect stories and share people's cathartic moments and how they overcame them, share the blueprints so people can live their life better. And I fell in love with my show like I've never fallen in love with anything I've ever done before. I enjoy people like yourself who come on and share their moments, and it's not easy sometimes talking about these things, sharing things that happen to you that sometimes people feel a little bit of shame or embarrassment, but boy, they sure help other people in sharing those stories and uplift other people. And so it's just been the greatest calling I could have done, and it came out of that gratefulness. It really did. Yeah. So, and now I just focus. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's the joy of it. I mean, because you have that inner joy. It's just like you're saying, you love your show more now than you ever did, and that's true joy of being on the path God wanted you on, doing what needed to be done to change your viewpoint, the mindset, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. But you went, you know what? I am a lifter, so let me go and lift out and give a hand out to others and share the joy. And I know I started blogging way before I did. Matter of fact, my girlfriend Nancy is the one that said, because I said, I think I need to write a book. And I said, but I'm not quite sure. And she goes, well, start blogging, start small. I didn't even know what a blog was. I go, what's a blog? And so she told me, I went and did. So I started blogging. And one of the things, and I was looking through my papers before we went on today, and I wrote down an equation from one of my blogs, my blog, because it's called Blessing and Opportunities. And the equation I came up with was LOB equals LOS. And what means lack of belief equals lack of success. And so if you don't have the gratitude and the resilience and the self-confident to go forward and do what you need to be, how do you know if you're on God's path? How do you know you're doing what God has laid out for you? Because we don't take a straight walk through life. We curve from all our do's and don'ts and missteps, and nobody's on a straight road. Jesus was on a straight road. The rest of us are curving. And so, that's what I came up with. If you have a lack of belief, you're going to have lack of success, because if you don't have gratitude of what the skills and talents God gave you, how can you be who you need to be?
Yeah. I was laughing because I'm thinking of all the curves I've had through life.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And we all go through them, but I've kind of learned this process that anytime I'm in a crisis situation, and it's pretty severe, and usually it's about money for me. So, being concerned about business or whatever the case may be. And I don't give a shit about anything else, really. I guess, I don't know. But money, hey, got to make sure that we have the money. So I always fall back to gratitude. I go, okay, let's take a breath here. Let's calm ourselves, get a little meditation maybe. And what do we have to be grateful for? And there's so many people that they get lost in the manic and the chaos, and they lose themselves. Sometimes they take their lives because they get caught up in that particular loss. Like I could have maybe started drinking or taking drugs back when COVID happened, or 2008 when I lost my companies. There were all sorts of times where I could have quit, and many people do, sadly. But the fact that people like you come on, and other folks come on and share their journeys, share what I call the blueprints to survive these cathartic moments, to rise from the ashes like a phoenix. They give other people a vision to, hey, there is a way out. And sometimes having that humbleness to humble yourself and go, what do I have? I think I've joked about this on the show before, but I used to sometimes get depressed, and I would have I had 3 major companies I was running, hundreds of employees, all this stuff, multiple states, multiple houses, cars, BMWs, all this life. And I would just feel persecuted and just abused by some of the things that would happen when you're at that scale. And so anytime I would get depressed, I'd go watch the show Cops, the TV show Cops. Or the TV show Cheaters was also good. My girlfriends and I would like that. But I go watch Cops. And, I live a pretty clean, legal life. I kind of have a thing where I don't want to ever go to jail. It's kind of my thing, Not really. Doesn't sound like fun. Not really into any guys getting behind me. I'm not sure what that means. But, I just I like being able to do whatever I want. So I'm going to be on the good side of things just to make sure that happens. And so I'd watch the show Cops. And, after 2 hours of watching people really who make a lot of mistakes in their life, sadly, I would kind of feel good about myself. I'd be like, come to think of it, I'm not getting pulled over. I don't have a meth problem. I'm not in a trailer home and I'm getting tasered by police officers for trying to fight them. I'm not going to prison. I'm not doing too bad.
Exactly.
It's sad I have to look at other people's car crash and go, well, at least it's not me. But no, that would kind of help me out. And sometimes maybe we don't need to watch Cops, but that humbling of where we kind of sit with the moment. And now I've learned to do an inventory. So I do an inventory. I go, what do I have? Just like I said with the podcast, I was like, what do I have? I have a voice. I have a podcast. I have massive influence we built over 10 years. And it was a bit of risk changing the format of the show, but it is the Chris Voss Show. So I made it easy just to go. People are like, what is the Chris Voss Show? Whatever the hell Chris Voss wants to talk about over 16 years.
Exactly.
He's changed a couple times. But no, sitting down and doing that inventory. So I would advise people, and I think you're in consensus with me, that if you're going through those cathartic moments, those dark moments where everything seems lost, sit down and go, what are my assets? What do I have? And how valuable are they? And you'd be surprised that you probably have way more value than what it is. And then to get to the other side, like you did, you found that you found a better place in your life. You found a better experience. And I thought it was interesting. You went back and thanked your ex and said, thanks for being a jerk, eh? I mean, I'm putting words in your mouth, of course, but
I didn't quite say that, but my husband now, Michael, says, your ex-husband's my best friend because he was so stupid.
Oh, really?
He said, I wouldn't be married to you if he hadn't, been such a jerk. So
send him a Christmas card every year. Then. Thanks for being a jerk.
Yeah,
wait, all my girlfriends send me the same thing.
But that's what it's all about. And it's really not about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You can lose everything, and people have lost everything, but it's your foundation. What makes you you? And for me, God makes me. And knowing that Jesus died for us so that we can make it to the other earth when he comes back at some point in generations to come. But that's what it's not stuff that makes us joyful. happiness is fleeting. Joy is in our soul. That's what it's all about. And so gratitude.
Stuff is fleeting too.
Absolutely. Yes.
I've been through identity things where you lose most everything, and you're like, well, if I can keep the watch, the gold watch, if I can keep the one BMW, and you play this Faustian bargain sort of game with yourself that
sure.
You can survive it. But so much of that is tied to identity. And the same thing with divorce. Divorce is an identity. I'm a married person and I don't need to, I've got that whole thing in the bag, but then it's gone.
Well, and that's true, because in my book, I actually say, I feel like I'm hemorrhaging. I've lost half of me. And you do, after 30 years of marriage, you've lost half of, even women whose spouse has died, you go through that grieving process as I'm just not whole anymore. And so you bet it's quite a walk to build that other half.
Plus, if you do get fully divorced, you usually lose half. So divorce comedy.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, as final thoughts as we go out, anything we need to talk about or tease out on people? Any new books maybe you're working on, or stories?
I actually I have two that I've sat with for quite a while. Well, I sat with this one for quite a while too. However, one of them is the blogs that I have written, and the other one I started, oh my goodness, decades ago, maybe in the 80s, and it's all about parenting, but parenting with a Christian, obviously, a Christian talk on it, a Christian way of life and how you raise your children, what you do. And it's there, and things have now changed from the 80s to where we're at now. And so it would have to be a total redone, but I'm seriously thinking of doing that. And there's lots of things. I would love to be able to, because I do enjoy visiting and talking. I would love to do what you do. I would love to get out and do more speaking engagements. I would like to get out and do that. And of course, if God's willing, I would love to sell more books. That's just kind of where it's at.
The nice thing about writing a book is the first time is the hardest one, because it's hard for everybody. That's why most people don't do it. It's difficult. It's difficult to stick it out. And, I remember even in editing, I was ready to jump off a cliff. I would call my friends at one point. I'm like, I'm just going to set this thing on fire. I think I've gone full Jack Nicholson in The Shining. And I'm just typing. I don't even know what I'm typing anymore. I'm just typing. Probably all work and no play is Jack and Oh Boy. I was waiting for someone to find a manuscript and go, he's lost it.
You needed a good editor.
Yeah. Well, the editing was driving me crazy too, because the editor would come back, and I had a great editor, and she would go, these 50,000 words, I've cut it down to 5 words we're going to keep, and I threw the rest of the trash. So get writing. So it wasn't that bad. I joke about it some, but it felt that way, because you're just like, wait, the first person who's reading this, it's not good enough. So, but I do have a bad habit of putting the commas in all the wrong places, and in fact, I don't even use commas, so that's probably.
Oh goodness! Well, I'm glad you're not my student.
Yeah, I'd probably get a. Yeah, my mom's an English teacher too, or was she a teacher?
Oh wow!
So yeah, she wonder she didn't rat me on that. That was a good thing to have a dealio there, someone to review.
There you go. You should have some DNA there that helps you write. Yes.
Well, what helped me write was I get through that last part was I complained to 2 authors. I think I had one on the show, and she'd written a lot of books. And she told me about how she was at a book signing. She never really thought much about it. And she was at a book signing, and this gal came up and said, hey, I wanted to let you know, thanks for writing your books. And I can't remember if they were novels. I think they were novels, or maybe they were feel-good books, uplifting, motivational stuff. And she says, I don't know if you know this, but you helped me get out of jail. And there's, back at my prison I was in, there's a whole women's group there that we sit down and on a often basis, and we read your books, and we try and make plans to be better people and get out of jail and not come back. And she was just moved. She was blown away, and she's since gone to that prison. But when she writes now, she keeps a picture of that young lady in her orange jumpsuit, and she knows kind of who she's writing for. And that's the weird thing about, sharing this sort of stuff. You never knew whose life you're going to change. Sometimes you'll never hear about it. Sometimes people come up to you years later and be like, hey, that one story? That changed my life, man. Thank you. And you're just like, wow. I made that story up. No, I'm just kidding. Nah,
No, and that's what's really joyful about it, is getting out there and being able to do that. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah. And make the world a better place when you leave it. So give us your final pitch out as we go out, your .coms. Where can people find you on the interweb?
Yes, absolutely. It's newlifeinjoy.com. So it's IN, enjoy. And it's on Facebook, and it's on my app. Yes, absolutely. And you can get the books at Amazon. You can order it from Barnes & Nobles. Or if you get a hold of me, I'll just give you one.
Oh, hey, I'm doing that. Give me
There
a
you
free
go.
book. I'm gonna have to drive out there. I'm in Utah, Vegas. Where are you at?
We're in Fresno, California.
Oh, okay.
No,
Yeah,
Fresno,
okay.
California.
Fresno, yeah.
sure.
My grandmother and her husband used to live in Fresno, and then they moved to Hemet, California.
All right.
So,
Yes.
there you go, back in the day.
Yes. Sure.
So I remember driving up there from LA as a kid, but that's a long way to go for $20. I might spend that in gas, so I'll just buy it on Amazon and recommend all my people here do. There you go, folks. It's $6.35 for the paperback. Might be cheaper than the gas going to Fresno these days, but
the gas in California is ridiculous for sure.
that's true.
And actually, we're going into the 100-degree weathers now, so you don't want to go to California.
Yeah, Fresno's kind of up in that desert area. I mean, the whole thing's a desert there, but
well, we're in
it's
the
kind of
valley,
up there,
so
right? Oh, okay.
yeah, we're in the San Joaquin Valley. We're in the middle of the state, where all the agriculture is.
Yeah. And probably is steak cheaper there? Because I know there's a lot of steak places. I think In-N-Out has their big steak, their burger farm, their cow farm up there for burgers or something like that.
I just know it's expensive to live in California. Yes.
I just have this vision of burgers just walking around a field.
Exactly. We have a lot of dairies, so maybe it's the milk.
Yeah, maybe it's the milk. There you go. So thank you very much for coming to the show. We really appreciate it. Thanks for sharing your wonderful story, enlightening people, and making lives brighter, Cynthia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And thanks for tuning in. Order up a book wherever fine books are sold. Shattered to Mosaic, all the while trusting God and walking with Jesus. No matter what you believe, these stories of gratefulness and trusting yourself and finding maybe something in the world bigger than yourself, that you can believe in. It's a journey that you can go through, because I don't know, man. Sometimes we get lost in this world, and we gotta have something we can hook onto. Thanks very much for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTok. It's a crazy place on the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.